In 2016, a team of scientists opened the eye of a shark and read its age the same way you would read a tree ring. The number that came back was 392. Here are 15 facts about animals that barely age at all, and the actual science is stranger than the myths people repeat about it. That shark is the Greenland shark, and the study came from Julius Nielsen and his team, published in the journal Science in 2016. They used radiocarbon dating on proteins inside the shark's eye lens, the part of the eye that forms once and then never changes for the rest of the animal's life. It works like a time capsule sealed at birth. For the largest female they measured, just over 5 meters long, the best estimate came out to 392 years old, with a plausible range between 272 and 512. That makes it the longest-lived vertebrate ever confirmed, a fish that could have been swimming when the actual Salem witch trials were happening. The same study estimated that Greenland sharks do not even reach sexual maturity until around 150 years old, which means every mature shark alive today was already swimming through Arctic and North Atlantic waters before most of the ships that first mapped those waters existed. They move slowly too, cruising at roughly 1 mile an hour, which has earned them the nickname sleeper shark among researchers who study them. Now for something that does not just live long, it can undo its own death. The immortal jellyfish, first studied under a different scientific name back in 1996 by Stefano Perino and his colleagues, has a trick no other known animal fully pulls off. When it is injured, stressed, or simply old, an adult jellyfish can revert its own cells backward, transforming back into its juvenile polyp stage and effectively restarting its life cycle from scratch. Scientists call this transdifferentiation. Researchers are still actively studying its genome to understand exactly how it manages this, and that work is genuinely ongoing, not settled science with a clean final answer yet. The species itself has actually changed names since that first paper. It was originally studied as Turritopsis nutricula, and taxonomists later split the lineage capable of this reversal out into its own species, Turritopsis dohrnii, once genetic work showed it behaved differently enough from its relatives to earn a separate name. Here is where two separate animals get confused constantly, so pay attention to which one is which. In 1999, a research team led by John George used a different aging method, measuring a slow chemical change in amino acids inside whale eye tissue. On a set of whales caught in the 1990s, the oldest came out to 211 years old, give or take about 35 years. That whale is not the same whale you have probably heard about. The famous one is a bowhead whale caught off Utqiagvik, Alaska in 2007, found with a fragment of an explosive harpoon still embedded in its body. That harpoon fragment was manufactured in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and its design dates it to somewhere between 1879 and 1885. That means this particular whale survived being struck by a harpoon over a century earlier and kept living with the fragment inside it, which puts this specific animal's age at roughly 115 to 130 years old at the time it was finally caught. Two different whales, two different methods, two different numbers. Neither one gets to borrow the other's headline. It is an easy mistake to make because both stories involve a bowhead whale and both involve a number well past a human lifetime, and headline writers have merged them for years. The harpoon fragment gives you a vivid physical object you can point to. The chemical dating gives you the higher number. They are not the same proof, and they are not the same whale. Switch continents and switch entirely away from long life towards something almost as strange. Naked mole rats barely get cancer, and in 2013, a team led by Vera Gorbanova and Andrei Seluanov, published in Nature, found out why. Their tissue contains a form of hyaluronic, a molecule that helps hold cells together, that is more than 5 times larger than the version found in humans or regular mice. That oversized molecule appears to stop tumors from forming in the first place. A naked mole rat can live over 30 years, sometimes pushing toward 40, when a rodent that size would normally be expected to survive only 3 or 4. A 2018 study led by Rochelle Buffenstein's collaborators, published in the journal eLife, found something even stranger. Their risk of dying does not increase with age at all. A 25-year-old naked mole rat has roughly the same odds of dying that year as a 2-year-old one does. Part of what makes them such an unusual research subject in the first place is that they live nothing like a normal rodent socially either. A colony functions almost like a beehive, with a single breeding queen and dozens of non-reproducing workers, a social structure otherwise almost unheard of among mammals, which is exactly the kind of biological oddity that made scientists want to study every other unusual thing about their bodies in the first place. Back to something that was aged by killing it, and it caused a real scientific scandal. In 2006, researchers off the coast of Iceland pulled up an ocean quahog clam and froze it immediately for study, which killed it instantly. Nobody thought that was controversial at the time. Their first ring count in 2007 put the clam at somewhere around 405 to 410 years old, already remarkable. Then in 2013, a team led by Paul Butler recounted the growth bands more carefully and cross-checked them with radiocarbon dating. The real number was 507 years. This clam, now nicknamed Ming, hatched around the year 1499, and it was killed by the very scientists trying to figure out how old it was, 7 years before anyone realized exactly how old that actually was. The backlash when that number went public in November 2013 became known online as Clamgate. The counting method itself works almost exactly like counting rings in a tree stump. A clamshell grows in visible bands, one for each year, laid down in the hinge and around the outer edge as the animal ages. The first team counted the wrong section and stopped too early. The second team, cutting thinner cross-sections and checking their work against radiocarbon dating, found the bands they had missed. Here is a case where I have to be honest about what science does not actually agree on. Pando, a single quaking aspen root system in Utah, connected underground as one organism, covers over 100 acres and weighs an estimated 6,000 tons, made up of roughly 47,000 individual tree trunks, all sharing one root system. That size claim is solid. The age claim is not. You will see 80,000 years thrown around constantly online. Paul Rogers, a researcher at Utah State University who has spent years studying Pando specifically, has called that number wildly unlikely and prefers an age of a few thousand years instead. A 2025 study using mutations that build up naturally in the plant's cells over time, cross-checked against pollen records, landed somewhere between 12,000 and 34,000 years, though that research has not yet gone through peer review. Nobody actually knows Pando's real age. Anyone who tells you it is settled at 80,000 is repeating a number nobody can currently defend. The newer dating method works by counting up small genetic mutations that accumulate naturally as a plant's cells divide over time, then using the rate of that accumulation as a kind of biological clock. The same rough logic behind carbon dating, but applied to a living genome instead of decaying carbon atoms. It is a promising approach. It is also brand new, unreviewed, and still being checked against other evidence like ancient pollen records from the same valley. The tuatara, a reptile-like animal found only in New Zealand, runs its whole body slower than almost anything else with a spine. It has the lowest optimal body temperature of any known reptile, somewhere between 16 and 21 degrees Celsius, and that sluggish metabolism appears to be a big part of why individuals can live past 90 years in captivity, based on tracked records in the Age Longevity database. It does eventually stop growing, somewhere around 35 to 40 years old, which is itself unusually late for an animal that size. That single detail matters more than it sounds, because plenty of casual write-ups claim tuataras keep growing indefinitely, well past 60. They do not. What actually continues that late is breeding, not growth, and mixing those two facts up is one of the easiest ways this animal gets exaggerated online. And then there is Jonathan, currently living on the island of St. Helena, recognized by Guinness World Records in 2022 as the oldest living land animal ever documented. Here is the honest complication. Nobody actually recorded Jonathan's birth. When he arrived on the island in 1882, he was already a fully grown adult, estimated at around 50 years old at the time. Working backward from that estimate, the island's governor symbolically declared December 4th, 1832, as his official hatch date in November 2022. That makes him roughly 194 years old today, and it is a remarkably well-supported estimate. It is still an estimate, not a birth certificate. So what actually connects a 300-year-old shark, a jellyfish that can reverse its own aging, two different whales getting mixed up online, a clam killed by the process of counting its age, a tree nobody can agree on the age of, and a tortoise whose birthday was declared by a governor a century and a half after the fact? None of them are actually immortal in the way that word gets used casually. What they share is a biological trick that slows or resets the normal wear that eventually kills most animals. Whether that is an ultra-slow metabolism, a cell that can reprogram itself, or a molecule that blocks tumors before they start. Every single one of these creatures can still be killed. Several of them, ironically, were killed by the exact process used to measure how old they were. Watch the artificial egg built to hatch a moa next. It is the flip side of this exact story. Not an animal that refuses to age, but one an entire company is trying to build from scratch.